Okay, so I wanted to give a little update on this e-commerce website I've been working on, Maylee's Soap Store. Previously, I was pulling in all the product catalog data from a simple JSON file that was stored in an S3 bucket on AWS, along with all the other static website files. That worked out pretty good when I wanted to build a bare-bones HTML JavaScript prototype, but now I figured it was time to move all that catalog data into a proper database. That way, I could build an admin page where an admin user could manage all the catalog items without needing my help. To do that, I went ahead and refactored the JavaScript to send a request to an API gateway endpoint and retrieve the product data from DynamoDB. I set up a new table called Product Catalog, and I went with DynamoDB because, well, it's serverless, easy to manage, and I figured that NoSQL was a good fit for the simple key value structure of my data. Now, in my last video, I demonstrated how to set up CloudFront and WAF in front of a static website hosted in an S3 bucket. I didn't want to change that, so I just added another origin and configured the path /API/products to route to the new API gateway endpoint. And since I still have CloudFront configured to use my custom SSL certificate managed through AWS Certificate Manager, all the new requests to the API are still secured with HTTPS using TLS 1.2. I also ended up creating a new IAM rule to allow API Gateway to actually make the call to DynamoDB and scan the table directly. I could have proxied the request through a Lambda function, but I wanted to keep the implementation limited to MVP and make it as simple as possible. I really didn't need any complex transformations, so I decided to use an API Gateway Integration Response Mapping template with some basic VTL, or Apache Velocity Template Language. The tricky part was making sure I had all the right escape characters to prevent the JSON from getting all messed up. It was important to me that we get the same JSON back from the API that we had in the original JSON file. I didn't want to have to make any additional changes to the JavaScript or HTML. Now, since provisioning all this AWS stuff can be a bit of a pain, I wanted to update my OpenTofu infrastructure as code file to include the new resources. That included DynamoDB, API Gateway, the new IAM rule, some updates to CloudFront, and all that VTL stuff. And you probably noticed that main Terraform file is starting to get pretty bloated. I think next time I'll try splitting it up. Of course, swapping out a static JSON file for a properly managed database all happens behind the scenes, so the website should end up looking and behaving exactly the same. At least it better. So we gotta do a smoke test, and of course, as the site gets more complex, I'm also gonna want to start automating that test, but we'll save that for another time. But hey, it works, and it's live at mayleesoapstore.xyz. Now, you might remember that I kept the actual caching setting disabled in CloudFront, so if you look closely, you might notice a tiny bit of additional latency. That's expected for now, at least until I turn it back on. Alright, if anyone wants to take a closer look at the code for this iteration and pick it apart, I went ahead and forked it here. Maylee's Soap Store AWS Catalog Demo. I'll put the link in the description. Anyways, thanks for checking in. This project was a great way to bone up on some of those AWS skills. My name's Jeremy. You can check me out on LinkedIn.